Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Leo Rohr. I'm the president of the Richmond Alumni Chapter of Government School, and we're so glad that you could all come out tonight. I think we know why all of you came out tonight. Eddie Slipek is a draw in himself, and this amazing place is a really cool spot as well, and you're going to learn all about that tonight. But just want to thank you for coming out. We've got a sign-up sheet if you're not getting our newsletters and emails, and a fan of our Facebook page, Richmond Alumni Chapter. Please like us, and you'll hear about cool events like this. And to tell you about the next event that's coming up here is our social charity.
Hey guys, Faith Alejandro, class 2001. If you'll remember, every year when around the holidays, we always try to have an alumni event that brings everyone back. So a lot of folks come back into town. So our family's still in Richmond, and we're doing it again. Last year it was hard to do it, and it was a great success. I think at any given time there was always like 70 to 80 people, but I think we had over 100 folks come through the door all night long, and it was a great event. We tried that hard, we couldn't make it because there's space restrictions because they're expanding and growing like crazy. But we have a new brewery that we're checking out this year, the Isley Brewery over in Scott's Addition. From what I hear, it's great. They've got some really good brews right now. They've got an oatmeal stout, Belgian pale ale, and an Indian pale ale, and perhaps more to come. So it should be a great space. We're going to offer non-alcoholic beverages as well and some snacks. Feel free to bring your families. Feel free to come and attend. It'll be the day after Christmas, December 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. And as usual, we're going to have our canned food drive to benefit Feed More, and that'll be a competition between the classes. I think the class of 2000, your class, I think, won last year, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember.
That sounds about right.
I can't
99.
I know 2006 won the first year, then I think it went back to the old school alums, you know, a little bit after that. So now's the time to get your classes excited and bring more food in to benefit those in need. So mark your calendars, grab a flyer so that you can remember that. We'll send out more invitations and more details to follow soon.
Thanks, Faith. And Bryce Lyle is the head of a new alumni initiative that he's going to tell you a little bit more about, and hopefully we'll be doing great things in the future.
Right, thank you. First, there are a couple of chairs. There are two chairs if anybody else wants to sit. My name is Bryce Lyle, and Eddie's going to forfeit his chair soon. So my name is Bryce Lyle, I'm class of 99, and I just want to talk real briefly, while we have so many people, it's great to have such a nice crowd, about a new structure for the way the alumni are going to be organized. We are starting what we're calling the Alumni Steering Committee, which is a committee of the Governor School Foundation. And that committee is going to provide oversight to Hal Waller and the Alumni Office on basically all of the things that he does with alumni, which kind of boils down to 5 main things, which I'm worried I'm going to forget one of them. But we're going to provide some oversight and guidance on all alumni communications. So if you guys have any ideas about how you would like to be communicated with, we'd love to hear that. We're going to provide oversight on reunions, class agents, and how the foundation solicits donations from alumni, which if you have not yet donated to the annual fund, you can do it now online and save the foundation some postage. We're going to talk about alumni chapters, which this is kind of our flagship chapter, but we've got chapters popping up everywhere. The DC chapter is pretty active, meeting a couple times a year. We've had alumni events in New York and Chicago and San Francisco. I think there's one planned for Portland soon. Trying to get one going in Denver. So we're going to provide some oversight for that, try to get some more active chapters going. And then the Alumni Showcase, which we want to talk briefly about. And maybe David could give a little pitch for that if he wants. But the Alumni Showcase is going to be an every other year event. We've done one so far, and we've got one coming up this spring. The date is April 4th, where alumni come back to the school. We put on like a little conference for the current students. So that's going to be really awesome, and we're going to kind of systematize that a little bit more. Sana and David are heading that up this year. So I hope that you'll think about coming back and being part of a panel, a career panel, or to talk a little bit about your experiences to the current students. So that's kind of a new steering committee, and we are looking for people that are interested in getting involved with that. Those 5 areas are going to become sort of maybe subcommittees or focus areas that if you have interest in getting involved in any of those things, we'd love to talk to you more. And, did you already say, or do you want to give a pitch for, we need more volunteers in the Richmond Alumni chapter. That's one of the main points of concern right now is to try to get some more people involved in leadership of that. So if you have thoughts about that, or if you'd like to get involved, please let us know tonight, and we'll talk to you after the show. And so David Holland is going to introduce our speaker and talk about the show piece.
Okay, thank you. So I'm David Holland. I graduated in the class of 1998, and I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker and our hosts for this evening. So we are in the building of Dovetail Construction, which was created by Paul and Julie Weissend. They are members of the Government School Alumni Foundation Board and very strong advocates of this school, and are people who are profiled in this community, for one, for their transformation of this building, which we're going to hear about a little bit tonight. So they're combining their backgrounds in commercial real estate finance, information management systems, all of that covered in integrating this building, working with local architect Walter Parks. So Eddie Slipek is going to start this evening by giving us a little tour through the history of Richmond's architecture. We'll focus first on current controversial development, then move into some historical context. Exactly, I'm sure we all know what that is. And then move into what he considers to be two flagship projects within Richmond's historic preservation efforts, one of which is this space. Then the Weissends will give us a tour of the space and give us more information about what they've been able to achieve here. So I'll welcome Eddie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm so delighted to see all of you here and a number of former students. And of course, the first thing we always need to do is to feng shui the room, as you know. So, thank you all for taking care of that. Is the energy now? But first of all, I would love to thank the steering committee and the Richmond chapter so much for this wonderful invitation, and of course to the Weissends for their spectacular hospitality. All of you for coming, and for your folks, and Mrs. Taylor. Well, with that agenda of talking a little bit about something controversial, why not do that? Make sure we're all paying attention, and then we will move into something about the space where we are, and then of course the Weissends are going to give us what promises to be a remarkable tour of a remarkable place. So it just so happens that this morning I woke up and there was the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I passed these out. Richmond Times-Dispatch, and there was, pass every other one and share. Woke up to the morning paper, and here was a plan, a much heralded plan for the new stadium, exactly where the shot was bottom. And I thought, how appropriate. I didn't know that I was going to be speaking about that tonight, but it seems to work tremendously well, because what we're talking about tonight is historic preservation, adaptive reuse, of course within the context of this beautiful historic city that we know and we love and we work so hard to make better of Richmond. And so I was thinking, as I looked at this, and I was thinking about being in this wonderful Dovetail Construction headquarters building this evening, and with all of you who every day of your lives, I know personally how close each of you are to the city in your own way. I thought, well, how can we kind of tie these things together? And so I started looking at this plan, and I started thinking, because when I got to my office at Style Magazine this morning, they were all over, well, how much space do you want to write about this? You think I'll have an opinion? Well, so we were stamping tomorrow morning, and I'll see how much space. But let me just mention a few things we might be thinking about as we look at this sketch together. And there are just things that I think we ought to always ask ourselves, whether we are developing a project in our backyards, or whether we're on a neighborhood committee, or whether in our own jobs, or if we're traveling. What are the different kinds of things we look for? What are the things that kind of create a response in us that is something that's positive and carries us on a good day to maybe a little bit of a higher level. And so let's just ask a few things about this project, and then we'll move on to the building at hand here at Dovetail. But number one, I think one thing we ought to ask ourselves, because I think this will be an ongoing discussion for the next few weeks and months, is does this project really reflect the landscape of Richmond? Always start with the landscape. Does it reflect the hills and the valleys, and does it reinforce that concept that Richmond is a place that was built on hills, and Chaco Valley, for various reasons, it flooded. It was the place where slaves, unfortunately, were brought for the next chapter in their often very, very sad lives. It was a place where Jews came to Richmond, fresh from Europe, on their way to other places as well. It's been a place that's been a marketplace since it was Native Americans trod this part of the world. And so it's a place that's rich in so many layers in history. And since the flood wall has been built, there's insurance money and things are taking place down there. The architect who assisted the Weissends with this building, Walter Parks, for instance, has been building ground-up apartment buildings. Maybe some of you live in those. There are new restaurants. I think Jimmy Lee Jarvis here has a job as a bartender right now at one of the Chaco Valley restaurants, okay? So after tonight, everybody over to Jimmy's no. And so I think we need to ask ourselves, does this really reinforce that sense of the historical sweep of the bottom? Remember, Chaco Creek used to run through it open. Now it's in a little bit of a culvert going underneath. And so let's think about that. Does it really reflect the landscape? Does it enhance this thing? Does it reinforce the historic grid? The grid of the city, of course, was established in 1737 by William Byrd. And he played off of the marketplace that was already there on what is today 17th Street, and he laid off a rectilinear classical grid system. And this area we're looking at in the drawing, up to Interstate 95 on the left, is the absolute oldest part of the grid, 1737. So think about it, how wonderful. They were putting a ballpark on that 1737 grid. I just got to think, would they do that in Fells Point in Boston? Would they do that maybe up in North End in Boston? Society Hill in Philadelphia, would they put a ballpark in their most historic grid right down there on the waterfront? Something to think about, perhaps, as we're going along. Are any historic buildings, this is the oldest part of town, are any historic buildings going to be destroyed in this plan? Of course, this is not a place necessarily where George Washington slept, although he certainly might have. But are there, the power of this area is because of the accumulation of things that have happened over time, both socially, economically, racially, politically, from a religious standpoint, and architecturally. Is it going to hurt any of those things? That's something we probably ought to ask. Is this going to make the city more walkable? Are we going to want to go out now and walk around the stadium? Now, if this was a grid, I could cut right through it. But it takes a while to walk around the stadium. Is it really going to add to the walkability of downtown? That's something that's very popular these days. Does it reknit the city? Does it put things back together that are maybe in loose ends a little bit? Well, it looks to me like it's sticking two holes in the middle of the thing. One is that tall part up there, and one is that strip that is the former marketplace with that meandering little strip there. I don't know about you, but I don't know that every time I walk somewhere, I get out of my car or off my bicycle on Main Street and then just walk straight up the little path that's there. That looks a little bit interesting. Another thing to ask, is this the only place in Richmond where this can happen? Aren't there some other parts of town you could pick on? Like maybe north of Broad, over in the biotech area. There's a lot of open land there that for 50 or 75 years has been unresolved. But what about over by the Richmond Ballet Building where all those hillsides of parking lots are? Go over there maybe. Manchester, you know, why is maybe this area that's the Shroud of Turin the best place to put this kind of development? Just ask it. I'm not sure. Now, I've already had a great discussion tonight with one of our friends and colleagues here tonight, and he said, but the place just looks horrible. it's a wreck, it's a mess. And, well, yes, it's been benign neglect. The city has allowed the power lines to get dilapidated. It hasn't replaced the cobblestone streets, whereas farmers markets have taken place and grown all over the nation. Indeed, has the city done anything to bolster that oldest market, maybe on the East Coast? No. So it's been allowed to disintegrate, and now all of a sudden, help is on the way. Don't trust it necessarily. I don't know. Just a suggestion. Where is VCU in all this plan? At the announcement today, I don't think that that is the institution that's right on the hillside with the burgeoning medical center right there. It would seem to me that if VCU is as landlocked as I know it is, as I'm pleased to teach over on that campus, but on the Monroe Park campus, that this would perhaps be a place where there might be natural expansion for VCU. So where is that in the plan? The other thing is, what about the interpretation of the African American history, the saddest chapter in American history? What is that all about? Well, someone said to me this evening, well, they're getting whatever they means, $30 million for a slavery museum. It sounds to me if someone's getting $30 million for a slavery museum, then someone's getting hundreds of millions for something else. And where's all that coming from? You know, how low will you go to accept a check? That's something we need to ask ourselves. Some things are more important than $30 million. Just asking that question. The other thing is, what about the developers? Who's really behind this? Always ask what's going on. And then finally, what's wrong with the diamond where it is? If the city is so kept on developing parts of the city, number one, I think that we perhaps should be seeing this side of the plan, this plan, with another plan next to it for what's going to happen simultaneously, maybe at two other locations. One would be at the diamond site, multi-acres of city-owned property, and then next to that, perhaps the current city stadium site. What about a football stadium? What about VCU athletics? What about Virginia Union athletics? And how do these things go together? It seems to me that we're looking at this in a vacuum without really seeing how this could be spread out. Because if you want to develop one area of town, why not develop the current diamond site with the ballpark in its center, and then surrounding it by residential, retail, business, recreational use? Maybe start at that site. And if that's such a wonderful success there, where it does no harm, then perhaps it might be time to say, yes, that's a great idea. Let's take that paradigm to the bottom. Just a thought. Well, now, if that's what I was thinking this morning when I was looking at that plan, I started thinking about tonight and how I think something is being done very, very well in the space where we sit. And unbeknownst to many of you, this building is also a partner. In many ways, it's a bookend to another building that is also getting, I think, a very, very sensitive rehab, which is just a little bit across the way. Now, y'all are really going to have to quadruple up on this one. Okay. Chris, now, what we're looking at here, at the top photograph is a building that's over on the corner of Laurel and Broad Street. And I know that y'all are cosmopolites and know where Laurel and Broad Street is. But if you know, it's right across from the Metro Grill. Is it Metro? No, what's that bar? Change its name.
Empire?
Empire. We're right across from Empire. That was the train station or the terminal or the head house of the Richmond and Chesapeake Bay Railway Company. And starting in 1907, this building opened. It was a train station designed by Frank Gould, who was the nephew of Jay Gould, the robber baron from New York City. And in 1907, they were going to start a rail service that would start at Laurel and Broad here, and it would continue north to Ashland, and then it would take a right-hand turn and go down toward the Chesapeake Bay. And it was one way to bring seafood into the city of Richmond and get it here at a time when refrigeration was very much at its, refrigerated cars were coming online at this particular time. Well, what happened was Mr. Gould created an electric train starting here on Broad Street. And then you see the photograph in the center. There was this large trestle. If we're looking here, here's the station facing Broad Street. And there was the train tracks out here, and here's the train. And then there was built, 1907, a concrete trestle that went all the way across Bacon's Quarter Branch, the railroad tracks that were under there, and Chaco Creek was running under here as well. And at the time this was built, this was probably the largest concrete building in America. It had been planned to be a wooden structure that would bring the rails across. But Mr. Gould was in Europe. He saw a new reinforced concrete construction being introduced, and he telegraphed back to America. He said, hold everything, forget the wood, we're going to do it in reinforced concrete. And so the system was built across there in 1907, and then on this side of the ravine, about half a mile in distance, was the building where we are tonight. And this was the building that was literally the service building for the trains that came out of the station here. Probably property was getting too valuable along Broad Street in the early 1900s, and so the idea was that if we have to have more space to pull the cars off the tracks and service them and work on them, it makes sense over here. And so today, up here, over 100 years later, this is 1907, in 2013, both of these buildings are being restored. This one, of course, is completed, and we'll see in just a few seconds what's happened here. But Virginia Commonwealth University has recently purchased the old train station over here, and it's being adapted for a multi-use building, a kind of a building where it would be fun to walk by, unlike certain other buildings we've discussed tonight, because they're working very hard on they're going to put a street front retail in the building. It's going to be a gallery for alumni artists to show their work and sell their art. It's a no-brainer when you think about it. How come VCU, the large art school, hasn't had a place where its alumni can show their work on a regular basis? So that's going to create a lot of street life there. There's also going to be the new Anderson Gallery. It won't be called that, but the student gallery for undergraduate work will also be shown in that building right off of Broad Street. What a wonderful, wonderful display and opportunity that should be for students coming along that area. Upstairs, the Department of Kinetic Imaging is going to have its facilities, and in the rear of the building, back where there used to be shops, where the ceilings are a little higher and the floors are a little more solid, there's going to be the dance department, and choreography will be using that building there. So there will be this wonderful interdisciplinary approach to that particular building. Over here, of course, this building had been a shop for, had been a mechanic shop for many, many years.
Irons repair.
Yes, and so the question might be, what happened to the bridge here? The railroad continued until 1938, going from this point to Ashland. But in 1938, during the Depression, fewer and fewer people were taking it, and by then more and more people had automobiles in America. The train never made it down to the Chesapeake Bay, although that name stayed in the corporate name, because of the panic of 1907, which was one of the first major bank failures in this country in modern times. And so at the very year that this opened, the Gould forces in New York decided that they would cut their losses and not continue the rail beyond Ashland, taking that right-hand turn and going down to the Chesapeake Bay. And so a Richmond family, a couple, Julie and Paul Weissend, were looking around one day for a place to expand their business, which has created a regional, if not national, reputation for taking historic buildings and not just respecting in the renovation and the rehabilitation what the historic fabric is, but very sensitively doing that with one hand, but on the other hand, pushing things forward into the future. And they were suffering a little bit because they used to work out of their home in the near west end of Richmond. And they got great accolades from their clients, but they also got a little bit of a reputation for taking too long, because it seemed that the trucks were always out in front of this particular house in the near west end. And of course they were parking their trucks in front of their own home, but folks just thought the job never got done. So that was a little bit of a kick in the pants to maybe look around and do some other things. And so what I'd like for us to do this evening, of course, is to just think of the possibilities, whether they are large, taking an entire neighborhood like the Shockoe Bottom, and what are the questions we should ask, what are the opportunities that are possible there. And then tonight, as the Weissends take us around and show us what they've done here, what were the questions they asked, and what were the responses that they came up with as they took this unlikely structure that has been brought to life with such color and imagination and energy and environmental responsibility as well. And of course, it doesn't hurt to have it filled with the likes of all of you folks. So, I give you the Weissends.
Paul can take a group and I'll take a group, but just to give you a little bit of background, Eddie was right. We had people meeting at our house for, like one person said, 7 years there have been trucks at that house, 7 years. And so that was our, actually I'm from Miami originally, and Paul is from upstate New York, and we came to Richmond. He started his business right away. And we've always loved the building materials here. Loved the brick, the slate, the copper, the history. And it really felt like home, more than either place after like 4 or 5 years. And we have a joke, we've been here 25 years, so we have 350 more before we can say we're from here. If you add the ages of the houses that we've worked on, we're like Native Americans. So we have really embraced, as much as we could, kind of the uniqueness of Richmond and really tried to, more than belong, I think, accept and enhance and make it better. And so I literally drove around the perimeter, or the periphery of Richmond, looking for something that would be inspiring, something that would be indigenous, something that I could afford. And I came down here, took a right on Brook Road, and to me, Richmond looked like the Emerald City. And we were big Wizard of Oz fans, so that's a good sign. And so it really kind of got a life of its own. The entity that owns this is Yellow Brook Road. And I thought that was a good inside joke, but it really turned out to kind of guide us, because we want to be the segue for Richmond to be the green or the Emerald City, and there's no place like home, and it just keeps going from there. So you'll notice the Yellow Brook Road, and even like in the movie, at the outset, it's monochromatic, so you've got your gray, your black, and your white, and then inside is Technicolor, just like the movie. And really, we started off kind of, it was kismet to get, I didn't realize it was an electric railroad car barn. Once I realized that, I got some people involved who could get it on the National Register of Historic Places. And once we could do that, we could get tax credits, federal and state tax credits. So it's the first building in the country to be on the National Register of Historic Places. It's LEED Platinum, which is a rating system that's pretty difficult, and it's net energy zero. So we generate more power with solar power than we use, and we have like a $14 administrative fee from Dominion. They wouldn't let us survey it. They're essentially, the problem with solar power now is there really aren't effective batteries. So the grid serves as our battery. So we're attached to the grid. We have one of the first meters that actually goes backwards. It's a net meter. And so if like tonight, Paul, the Warden of Energy, is disappointed usually because it's like, gosh, we're not generating our own stuff. We're pulling back from the grid because the sun isn't out right now. So it's helpful to still be attached to the grid. But so anyway, we're happy that we're restoring, Richmond was the first city in the country to have an electric trolley, and we've lost sight of that. Many people don't know that, but if you have any class, I'm sure you did. But also architecturally, there are very few buildings that are connected with that path. So they were very anxious to have it on the National Register because more of the use than even the aesthetic. But the aesthetic is really pretty cool too, and we actually reskinned. So we had to work with the Department of Historic Resources. I mean, it's this very close dance through the whole thing. And like we decided we wanted to do solar power, and so we're like, we'll put this on the roof, the solar arrays. You can't really see it, and they're like, no way, you can't do it. It's going to compromise the integrity. And it's like, but you can't see it. Come on. And they're like, nope, can't do it. So it's funny because we've really learned, we have freestanding arrays, and it's really become iconic for the building. It's like almost sculptural. And the Department of Historic Resources, well, CAR, we have an alum who's with CAR, and there's all sorts of great help, and we're so lucky to have them in that capacity. But it really has become whatever challenges we faced. I think that the project ended up to be better as a function of the evolution that you went through. So having a historic project on one side and a LEED project on the other, both Paul and I became LEED accredited professionals through the process. And we have geothermal heating and cooling. We have 4 200-foot wells that bring the moderate temperature of the earth up, and we heat or cool from that. We have Forest Stewardship Council certified wood, so it's sustainably grown, sustainably harvested, it's sustainably replenished. All of the paint has like no VOCs. We were contemplating drinking it, but we probably shouldn't. Like the bathroom, everything is low flow. We have a waterless urinal. For LEED, if you have a bike rack and a changing area and a shower, you get a point for that, so we've got all that. There's recycled glass in the tile. There's recycled aluminum shards in the counters. The desks are recycled warehouse flooring. All of this concrete is new. One of my big criteria was that it needed to look cool teal, because I'm from Miami and that kind of thing. And we had one thing, we were pushing the envelope, and you're kind of, doing things that haven't been done before, so you're going to get burned a little bit. And I told someone, I tell the story, I found this material that was recycled sunflower hulls that was formed into this composite board. And so it's super, super green. It's 84% recycled sunflower hulls. And so when you have sunflower seeds, the hulls go one way, the seeds go into a package that you eat. So this is using that. So a lot of federal projects have used it. But my big criteria was, does it look good if it's teal? Okay, and it looked so good. It was kind of this marbleized look because there are the little holes in it. So it looked so cool. So we made desks out of it, we made all the cabinets out of it. And I had it dyed dark brown, and I had it dyed teal, and we had natural colors upstairs, and it looked so good. The carpenters hated it because it would warp super easily, it was unstable. So Paul figured out steel angles and relief cuts, and it always kept the doors, like these big doors in the kitchen, twisted into the right, true and square. So we're like, we conquered this material. Yes. And I was going to Boston, Paul calls me, said, guess what likes recycled sunflower hulls? And I'm like, what? He's like, pantry moths. Two of these doors had been replaced, and they had been contaminated with pantry moth larvae. And so it took us like 3 months to figure out, we have a lot of pantry moths, and we cook some, but not enough. We don't have flour, we don't have, and it turns out that the cabinets could be a host in perpetuity. As long as there were cabinets, there could be a place for the pantry moths to lay their eggs. And then there would be larvae, and we are way too familiar with the life cycle of pantry moths. Let me tell you. So the natural thing a lot of people would do is you're going to fumigate, right? But everything here, there's nothing. Toxicity is just at an all-time low. We have measured air coming in. We have all these different filters. Paul will tell you more about that. But the last thing we could do is contaminate it. So we brought in a special group from Harrisonburg, and they have heaters, and they get rid of bed bugs in hotels by heating the room up. And we had all these heaters in the whole building, and we heated the building up to 150 degrees for 8 hours. So much so that the sap was coming out of the wall. It was so crazy. And the pantry moths, they were diminished for like a month, 2 months, 3 months later. It ended up, the company went bankrupt, and we ended up filing an insurance claim. So these are birch that are staying. We don't but you'll notice we replaced them recently, so they're still, we need their paint and stuff like that, but it was like, oh gosh, sometimes you get burned. But for the most part, I mean, it's just been a fantastic, we've had so much fun with this building, and we really, really enjoy it. So tell them about the lights and mechanical loads, and then we'll get up.
Okay, well, I guess one of the big things about trying to reduce your carbon footprint and reduce your energy use, in order to get to zero, zero energy, you have to kind of exponentially decrease your usage, or you could line the whole property up with solar panels, and that would do it. But that gets really expensive, and I don't think it would look all that great. So what we tried to do is take the different systems of the building and exponentially decrease the power usage. And really on all our projects, we do some form of this, even if it's just a small thing, it can have a big impact. And so we kind of start with energy efficient structure. So, this building, could arguably be was one of the worst energy-wise buildings ever constructed. I used to kid, I'd call it our easy bake oven, because when the sun comes out, it heats the metal up, and it just radiates. Or in the winter, it's really cold. So in our building, within a building concept, where we're preserving the old part of the building so that everybody can see it, and then in the new parts, this contemporary modern structure that was super insulated and very airtight. So we're exponentially decreasing our need to heat and cool the space to begin with. So that's usually number one. Then with the heating and air conditioning, we're using the geothermal heating and air conditioning system. So again, another exponential decrease in that particular system. And then the third thing I looked at was all the lighting needs. And when we're doing our submissions for these LEED certification, they did a kind of a study on what the building would take if you used kind of the normal code-approved light fixtures. And it turned out that it would be somewhere like 7,000 to 8,000 watts necessary to light the building up with kind of everything on, like it is right now. when we took that down, LED lighting was really just all of a sudden starting to really come on where you get good quality lighting, whereas before, it took a while for the light would blue. Now it's pretty nice. And then it's improving all the time. But we took the lights, now the lighting now is, if everything's on, it's like 1,700 watts versus 7,000 or 8,000 watts. So again, not an exponential decrease. And just as an example, that light fixture up there, Julie said, I want stage lighting in here. And I was like, oh God. So we started looking for stage lighting. And it was really expensive. And it just, you get blasted with stage lights are hot and not very energy efficient. So I found these lights and he had a welder make this frame that looked like stage lighting. And each one of those lights is only 12 watts. So they're equivalent to like a 65, 70 watt incandescent light. So that whole fixture with 12 of them up there is the equivalent of like 2 75 watt light bulbs.
How long would you ever change the bulbs?
Well, in theory, you should never have to replace them in your lifetime.
15 or 20 years.
So it's like they're projecting a life of like 50,000 hours. So,
It would take us that long to get the light.
so you pay a little bit more for the fixture, but it's quite a bit. You get. I guess that for a lot of energy efficient things, there's an initial cost, and then there's a more of a long-term payback over time. So.
Well, and another, just bringing it back again to the history, and then we'll do our tours. This is such a cool resource with Richmond. You can go to the Valentine Museum and you tell them any topics that you're interested in. So on like trolleys, electric railroad, Brook Road, and they set you up with all of the hits in their archives, and they give you white gloves, and you go through their archives. So all these pictures that are like 8 by 10 pictures, and you pick out the images that you want, and you can buy the digital images. And I just had this vision in the Technicolor rooms of blowing them up on canvases and having kind of the building rooted again in its own history. And so this is Brook Road. And this is the electric railroad track as it goes north through the north side. This was the station in Ashland, the power station that charged it. I have the back side of the train in the bathroom, which I thought was appropriate. And all around, you see trolley references, and then there's our wall of shame that Eddie is familiar with, where there was not only to get buses, there was like this pretty despicable movement on the part of different corporations to get jurisdictions hooked on buses and gasoline, and they had to forego the cars. And Eddie was in Lisbon and was riding a Richmond trolley pack.
Yeah, well, one of my brothers and I were down in Old Town, I guess you call it Lisbon, and we were on these old wooden trolley cars, and we thought these are really, really, really neat, and we should have these in Richmond. Maybe that movement will help. And someone who spoke English overheard us. We thought we were all Portuguese. They said, "Oh, from Richmond? We bought this car from Richmond." Lisbon bought some of the rail cars that used to run on the Richmond streetcar system. So
that's our wall of shame. So not only did they have to give the cars up, but they had to take the track up so they would never be tempted to go. And now we're talking about rapid rail, and the expense is crazy because we don't have the infrastructure there anymore. So that's a sad thing. But there are typical cars and interiors of cars, and then the people on them. I blew up the faces of the people on them. So as you go around, make sure you check it out. God bless you. And then one last thing is, it's the 100th anniversary of the Virginia AIA, American Institute of Architects. And they have a list of buildings in the state, and they're going to winnow it down by votes of everybody's favorite 100 buildings in the state, and we're on the list. Yeah. So I'm going to be sending a link once the website goes early. But it's great to have you here, watering the plants at Maggie Walker because he lived closest. And he came back from after school night and he's like, Mom, I think we're the only people that are living in our office. And I said, honey, we used to have our office in our house, and now our house is in our office. It's like a complete circle. So, but it was actually a really fun place to live, and and my kids, the further it gets away from it, the more they say, yeah, that was okay. But I had a vision of having train cars, and each one would be set up as a really cool bedroom. So this could be the community space, and then everybody goes to their really cool bedroom at night. So maybe in 10 or 15 years. It's great to have you. And
So does anybody have questions before we walk around?
What size is your solar array?
It's a 6 kilowatt.
6 kilowatt?
Yeah. So it's not a very big system.
What's the square footage of the building?
The conditioned space is like around 2,500 square feet.
And what do you have on it? Do you power like a hot water heater, or what do you do with that?
Well, one of the nice things about geothermal is that in the cooling season, the byproduct is hot water. So we, pump that free hot water into the hot water heater, and then in the wintertime, it's just super insulated electric hot water heater. And
What big of a well? Are they like the 8 or 10 inch wide ones, or?
well, it's just like what they do is they come in with it. There's some photographs out here of the pump truck in action with it. They drill a well just like you would for a water well. It's about probably 4 to 6 inches in diameter, straight down, and you don't extract water. It's a closed loop, so you don't want to contaminate the aquifer. So you put down this closed loop pipe, and you pump your water down that's been used, and then the moderate temperature changes it in temperature, either hotter or colder, depending on the season. And we derive our heating and cooling it's basically from the difference in temperature between the water going in and the water coming out.
And the capacity, so here we have 4 200-foot wells. We did a 10,000 square foot house on Monument, and we have 5 400-foot wells there. So the depth is affected. And also, we hit the aquifer here about 100 feet, and it was 400 gallons a minute. Once you hit the aquifer, it's like a real water management problem. I mean, temporarily.
Yeah.
And then, but it moderates temperature that much more, so you like to hit the aquifer because it works. And you have to go typically less far, once you're in that nice moderate aquifer.
That's not even really a new technology, is it? That's been around for a while.
It's really, at our house too, we've used some European technologies because they ran out of wood so long ago, for all intents and purposes. And we have like a masonry heater. So it's made so that it's like a furnace, and it's like a 1,500 degree burn with 20 pounds of wood, and it's so hot that there are hardly any particulates, so they're very little in terms of emissions. And it's faced in stone or tile, and it will radiate for 2 days, just from that one burn. So we really try to do research and incorporate stuff.
Where's that furnace made?
We bought the kit, and we needed it to look aesthetically like a fireplace, so we made like a hybrid, so it looks like a fireplace, but it works. It's really cool, and it's away from the end of the house, but you can't really see it, and there are vents all around. And it's pretty fun. That'll be the next door. Go on my go.
I have a question about the building systems. I think you guys touched on one of the issues of owning a green or sustainable building, which is that you pay higher upfront costs, but there's a payoff in a certain amount of time. Have there been any aspects or systems in this building that have paid off sooner or later than you hoped?
We had all planets align for the solar power. I mean, it was incredible. And it's funny, I went to a lecture about CarMax had a LEED building, and I was thinking, I think we can do this. And it dawned on me, if you had a tax credit, historic tax credit project, they can essentially subsidize the LEED aspects of things or the green aspects of things. So that's 45% right there. You get 20% federal and 25% state tax credits right there for all of the expenses. And then there was economic surplus money available on the state level and the federal level. So we had the solar arrays paid for the first year with all of that. That's a complete anomaly. It's crazy. And actually, the Department of Energy, we were on their website. They had a website like by state, and it was really funny because we got permission to skin this building. It was corrugated metal initially, but it was 100 years old. So as long as we replaced the windows with exactly the same profile, and we used the corrugated metal that was the same profile, we could replace it. So we did that, and we skinned the building, but the frame is original, and it's embossed Carnegie 1903. It was partially prefab, and then they put it together here as well. It's so cool. I have all these pictures, we could just be here all night. But so when we skinned it, it was just the frame. And there's some pictures here where I infused, in the white hallways, I have stuff full of color. But it was just the sky and this frame. And it was really sculptural. And actually some artists, one in particular, started painting it, and it would show up in these different galleries. And it's really cool. It's got like a life of its own. But on the Google, so we're looking to get these grants back from the Department of Energy, and Google had taken a picture when it was skinned. And so the Department of Energy, evidently when you ask for the money, they do random checks. And so the guy was like, because we're like, okay, we get the money. And he's like, do you mind if I come by and check it? And we're like, no, that's okay, fine. And he brought people from the federal, he just so happened, the state level and the federal level. So they had a tour here, and they were so excited that they put it on their website. But so that was, most things, like the LEDs, they're getting cheaper all the time. And that works well. The payback is pretty good for that.
Well, the solar panels have come down a lot in price. And even if you didn't have any tax credits, let's say a building this size, the utility bill would be somewhere, for an average building, would be somewhere in the, let's say, $400 or $500 a month range. So, let's say $4,000 or $5,000 a year in power costs, and so 10 years or so, you easily cover the cost.
And commercially, there are carbon offset, there are markets for carbon offset credits. So you can make a couple $1,000 a year doing that as well. The whole key, though, is to get to zero. If you get below zero, Dominion doesn't give you enough money to justify the extra arrays. So you got to try and hit it, right? That's the optimal one.
They don't reimburse you.
No.
They don't reimburse you what the cost is. They do the reimbursement, and that is their wholesale cost. What it costs them to produce it. Yeah.
What it costs them to produce solar, or what it
What it costs them, what it costs them,
Yeah.
we were down in Shacklebottom the other night, and the coal train went through, and it just kept going and going and going and going. And like I said, that's what we ultimately wanted to do, is ultimately, as humans need to stop burning things to keep themselves warm, and then turn on the lights if we're gonna change the environment and make it go in the other direction.
Well, and we have an electric
We
car.
want to show you to do it.
So if we have a Leaf, and so if we plug it in, it'd be so great, there are no emissions, and it's never been to a gas station, and that's really cool at home. But if we plug it in here, it's like completely carbon neutral because we're generating power from the sun. And it's electric, and then it's back 100 years later to an electric car barn.